Hey everyone, XYT here, welcome to another video. One of the most frequent questions I get is how do I make all that plat that I spend on Rivens, skins, slots and other stuff. So I decided to make a video about it. Anyway, it's actually pretty simple. At least 90% of my platinum income is coming from Riven mods. Essentially, Rivens pay for themselves, plus they generate a lot of profit. Now the reason for it is because Rivens are the most traded commodity in all of Warframe. Plus, a lot of people are actually quite lazy and they don't open the runes they get from sorties and alerts. This is where I come in. Before I get into more detail, here's a disclaimer. This method does not guarantee profits. Since runes are RNG, you never know what you will get, so you might end up losing platinum instead of getting a profit. So you need to be careful and you need to have that in mind. Also, this is not a good way to make plat for new players. You need to have finished the war within to even unlock Rivens. Plus, this particular method requires you to have a starting capital. The actual amount depends on which kind of Rivens you're planning to do, but at the very least you should have at least 400 platinum to start with. Of course you can start with less, but from my experience 400 is where this method gets somewhat consistent. Anything lower than 400 combined with RNG nature of Rivens means higher chances of losing your plat. Alright, let's get into the method itself. Basically, the whole strategy is very simple and there are only 3 steps to it. First, get Veiled Riven mods. What I do is decide which type of Riven I want to do, then I go to Warframe market, Warframe.market to be specific. I check the prices of this type of Riven, particularly the lowest sell price and the highest buy price. Usually I'm not in a rush to get platinum, so I can just afford to make a buy order and leave it on the market while I go play or study or watch a movie or do anything else. Since Warframe.market shows my buy order to other people, I don't need to waste time in trade chat. I don't need to search through Discord servers for best offers, nothing like that. It's very efficient. Now it might actually take a while before I get the amount of Rivens I want, because it entirely depends on how many people are selling the Rivens. Usually I buy Rivens after sorties are reset, because that's when the amount of veiled Rivens in the game usually increases, since people complete sorties, get Rivens as a reward, and some of those people sell those Rivens on the market because they're just too lazy to open them themselves. Now, when it comes to price, it's not very stable. For example, if the year reveal they're gonna release a new weapon or a new prime for existing weapon, usually prices for the Rivens of that type go up. So, for example, when the year revealed Piranha Prime, prices on Veiled Piranha Rivens actually went up a bit. So like 5 to 10 plat, like 1 or 2 days they were like 15 plat above, but then they just reduced to somewhat stable price. But for the most part, I've set myself a cap on each type of Riven. So for example, I'll never buy pistol Rivens higher than 25 plat each, or rifle Rivens higher than 45 plat each. Now, the cap depends on your preference. If you need platinum faster, you might set it higher, but personally I don't really need a plat all that much, so I can afford to wait longer and get Rivens cheaper. If you really need to get platinum fast, you can buy Rivens like 50 plat a piece, or you can, buy pistols like 40 plat each, but that will reduce your returns, so you might end up just losing plat instead of getting a profit in the worst case scenario. Anyway, the second step is opening Rivens. This is actually both the most boring and the most exciting part. It's boring because if you do it like me, you end up having to do a certain challenge like over and over and over again to open new Rivens. For example, you might end up having to do like 10 survival missions or like 15 incursions. And those are very boring and actually take a lot of time. It's not that bad though, because most of the challenges are actually pretty easy and fast to do, especially if you know the ways to cheese them. And for the ways to cheese them, you can actually check the Riven guides that I've posted before, and there are a lot of ways basically to cheese every Riven, except for like 3. So yeah, they're like, actually, now that I think of it, there are like 4 or 5 Rivens that cannot be optimized and require at least few minutes per Riven regardless of what you do. So for example, survival Rivens require at least 6 or so minutes each, so if you have 10 survival Rivens, you will be doing at least 1 hour worth of survival. So it really gets boring sometimes. But when you complete the challenge, it's usually quite exciting to see what Riven you will get. Because Rivens are RNG and there's no way to influence what you get, it's always a lottery. You might get 5 Lankas in a row, or you might end up having like 20 Karak Rivens. And there's really nothing you can do about it. Now the third step is to sell Rivens that you get. I used to do this by posting Rivens in the various Warframe Discord servers, also Warframe forums in the official Warframe website, but that was very boring and very tedious. So I just go to Riven.market, I check the Riven pricing for the Rivens I got, find one with somewhat similar stats to what I have, check its price, then post the Riven for the same price or for the lower price if I want to sell it faster. This step is actually the slowest because it depends entirely on how many other people are selling the Rivens and how many people are looking for the Rivens that you are selling. And it actually depends basically on them how much plat you will get and whether you will make a profit or not. It's actually quite common for some Rivens to take weeks to sell, but some other Rivens can be sold pretty much instantly. So for example, if you get a Lanka Riven and you get a Burston Riven, Lanka can be sold basically instantly, within a day, easy, but Burston might actually take like a couple of days or a week or maybe even a month if it's very bad. Anyway, prices actually depend on such things as weapon popularity, general hype of weapon for the Riven, and general rarity of the Riven. So for example, despite Bolter and Burston Rivens being somewhat equally common, at least based on my experience, Bolter usually sells better than Burston because Bolter is generally a better weapon than Burston. And people have stuff like Bolter Prime, which is a great weapon, and they're just looking for Rivens for that, but nobody really uses Burston because it's a bad weapon. MK1 Burston is probably the weakest weapon in the game. The normal Burston is also pretty bad, and nobody really buys Riven for those. So yeah, it's really hard to sell those Rivens. Also, the prices depend on hype. So for example, when Piranha Prime was announced by DE, the prices on Piranha Rivens increased like 4 times. It fell down a bit after a while, but initially the surge of super pricey Piranha Rivens was amazing. Normally Piranha Rivens were like 150 plat each for a good one, but as soon as they announced Piranha Prime, it just boomed. You could see people just selling like Piranha Rivens like 2000 plat each, and that's for a bad Riven. For unrolled one, you could get like 500. So it really depends on hype, and well, yeah, you cannot really foreshadow this. It's all about timing, really. I actually tested the rifle Rivens to see whether I can get profit, and if I can, how much profit can I actually make. Keep in mind, since Rivens are RNG, your luck may vary and you might end up losing plat, but usually you should be making profit most of the time. So I bought a total of 58 veiled rifle Rivens from market. It took me a couple of days, but I had other stuff to do, so it wasn't really a big problem to me. Keep in mind, I am MR24, so I can do more trades per day than most other people. If you have lower MR, you have less daily trades available, so it might take longer for you to buy the amount of Rivens you want. Prices weren't very stable and actually kept changing quite a bit, the margin between lowest and highest being about 8 platinum. The actual lowest price per Riven was 35 plat, while the highest was 42. It's not really a big deal, but it's something I thought you should keep in mind. For all 58 Rivens I paid a total of 2,377 platinum, the average price being just under 41 plat each, so really not that bad. Then I proceeded to open all of them. For the most part I opened majority of them on the first try, but there were some interruptions and stuff like syndicate spawning in a mission where I cannot take no damage, or stalker spawning and just killing me, stuff like that. It actually was quite annoying a few times, but for the most part it was pretty smooth. So I failed a total of 6 times, which wasn't really fun at all. In the end, it cost me quite a bit of time too. I spent a total of 7 hours, 27 minutes opening all of the Rivens, and that's the actual in-game, gameplay time, the time I was, just basically in the game, and that's like menus and stuff also. If I had done all the Rivens on the first try though, it would have taken me only about 6 hours and 45 minutes, so I actually lost almost 45 minutes just because of fails. Rivens that took me the most time to complete were the ones with challenges for survival without killing anyone, defense with objective taking no damage, and aim glide headshots. While survival and defense are naturally long, since you cannot really accelerate the timer, the aim glide ones took longer because I was doing them after Limbo got its stasis nerfed, and I couldn't use Limbo to cheese aim glide challenges anymore. So it took me a bit of time to figure out a new way to do the aim glide challenge. You can find my method in one of the more recent videos. That's the strategy that I used to unveil these rifle Rivens. I will also link it at the end of this video. Anyway, after 7 hours I got 58 unveiled Rivens and to surprise of basically nobody. Most of them weren't really all that good. These are all of the Rivens that I got, and yeah, most of them are basically trash. Obviously garbage Rivens are more common than actually valuable ones. I got Vectis, Lanka and few Rubico Rivens though, so that was pretty good, since that's where the most profits come from, but I'll get into more detail a bit later. Sadly I didn't get an Opticore, which would have been very cool, since Opticore, despite dropping in price in recent months, is still a solid Riven that can be sold for a nice sum, even unrolled. Anyway, to make this simpler, I divided all Rivens into 2 categories: low to medium value Rivens and high value Rivens. A bit about each. Low to medium value Rivens are the Rivens that are either not very popular with buyers, or for weapons that are not commonly used or have low disposition. Typically these Rivens take a long time to sell for a decent price, with the exceptions being Boltor, Ignis, Amprex and few others. Sometimes I wouldn't even bother selling these Rivens, I would just dissolve them for endo or transmute them with Riven transmuters if I needed to free up Riven space, because it would just take too long to find a buyer. Notable example being the Stinger, which to be honest would take months to sell even for as little as 20 plats, so I basically instantly dissolved it, as it was totally not worth the time to even put it on market and just wait for a buyer and stuff, and I actually just needed space. Also, these runes are the ones that I would be least likely to roll with Kuva, but I'll talk about it a bit later as well. Now, for high value ones, these are the runes that gave me majority of profits. They are quite rare, and even with bad stats or unrolled, they can be sold for a lot of plat actually. Generally, these are the runes I would roll before selling, and these are the runes with the highest potential price. To put into perspective how expensive some of these Rivens can get, if I were to roll Lanka and get something like critical chance, critical damage, damage with negative zoom, or critical chance, critical damage multi-shot with negative zoom, I could easily sell such a Riven for at least 10,000 platinum. That's just crazy, just like prices on Lanka are so insane, it's incredible. But basically that's why I don't bother with low value Rivens, as even one Riven of high value can be more profitable than 50 low value ones. So it's just, it's just up to you whether you want to waste your time trying to get these cheap common Rivens to profitable levels, or you just want to focus on one Riven that can just outpay all of those combined. I sold majority of Rivens on Riven.market, with the exception being Ignis, which is sold in trade chat because I randomly saw a dude buying Ignis Rivens, and I just was, you know what, I don't want to wait, days or weeks to sell it, I'm just gonna sell it right now. So I just sold it on trade chat, no problem. But that was the only Riven that I sold in trade chat, and all the other ones went on Riven.market. Also, I kept a track of all trades and I made a spreadsheet for them, which I will link in the description, so if you're interested, you can check it out and see how I did. Anyway, it took me about 2 weeks or so to sell off enough Rivens to not only break even, but to actually get double the profit. Lanka, Vectis and Rubico were the easiest ones to sell, basically all going within 2 or 3 days. Lens took a while to sell, but eventually was sold like a week later for quite a nice amount. And then stuff like Scorch, Amprex, Boltor and Latron were also sold a week or 2 later. Now, the stuff was selling actually quite slowly, especially the low value Rivens, because at that time I didn't really play Warframe all too much, maybe an hour a day or so. And if I played more, all of the Rivens could have been sold faster, but I wasn't really in a rush to get all that platinum anyway. After all the major Rivens were sold, it took about another week or so to sell off majority of low value ones like Cernos, Ferox, Glaxion and Mutalisk Quanta. And in the end of 58 Rivens I sold 44, for the total profit of 4,835 plat, majority of which came from Lens, Lanka, Vectis, Vulca, Rubico and Amprex, which was actually quite weird, because Amprex hype pretty much died by this point, and those runes were with bad stats anyway, but maybe some people still believe it's the next best thing ever. Anyway, the rest were dissolved because I couldn't sell them, so that's like 14 runes or so, and I needed space for new runes for another project, and I just really just couldn't bother. It just took so long to sell, and if I didn't really need rune space, I probably would have kept a few of these old runes up for sale still, but I already made double the amount of plat that I spent on veiled runes, and it really didn't matter if I got another like 300 platinum or so. I just didn't have the time to invest in selling those Rivens. It would have taken just way too long. I probably could have sold them faster if I farmed Kuva and rolled them to good stats, but Kuva farming is the single most boring activity in this game, and at least personal to me, I didn't want bother farming to get like few extra plat from rolling those Rivens. So I just didn't do it, I just dissolved them. In general, all of the Rivens I sold were mostly unrolled. The most rolls one had was like 6, and that was the Lanka. I also rolled one Rubico to like 4 rolls, and both Amprex Rivens to like 5 or 6 rolls each, I can't remember. I just hate farming Kuva, and I just didn't have any Kuva, and I would rather sell Rivens without putting extra effort into rolling them. So that's basically that. After counting all the time and effort, the total amount of time spent on this entire project was about a month. That's with buying, unveiling and selling. But if I played more actively after I unveiled all those Rivens, I could have sold all the Rivens way faster, possibly within 2 weeks or so. So majority of players, if they were to do this type of plat farming, shouldn't have too much trouble selling all those Rivens within like 2 weeks or so after unveiling. Especially if they get like hyped Rivens like Lanka, Amprex, those gonna sell fast. If you get like Cernos or Mutalisk Quanta or so, those should sell within like a week or 2. And yeah, for how easy this type of farm is, it's really not that bad. The requirements are not that high, the biggest problem being the amount of time needed to do everything. The unveiling and buying actually don't take the most time, but the selling is the absolute worst. Even on Riven.market, it just takes a long time to sell Rivens. But if you are not in a rush to get a lot of plat fast, it's definitely a good way to do so. Especially considering you could get lucky and unveil a Lanka or Rubico with good rolls right off the bat. So if you, let's say, get Lanka with CC, CD damage, or maybe if you get Opticore, which is actually quite common lately, you could just sell it and just get a lot of plat. Or if you get Tiburon, which is on a hype since Tiburon Prime was released, and those runes are quite common, you can just sell it for 300 plat unrolled. But if you get with good stats, you can sell like Lanka Riven with good stats right off the bat, especially if it's unrolled. You can sell it for like 2000 platinum easily. So you can never know what you're gonna get, and the potential to get a lot of plat per Riven is worth doing this. You can just really just get a lot of plat fast if you get lucky. So that's basically that. Just how I do plat farming, and it just takes quite long to sell stuff, especially if it's not hype stuff, but that's about it. It's very easy, it doesn't require you to be super active, it doesn't require you to have super good items. All you need to do, just get Rivens, open them and sell them, preferably on Riven.market, because that's the easiest way to do so. Anyway, that's about it. Like it if you liked it, dislike if you disliked the video, subscribe for more content like this, and I will be doing a pistol Riven challenge next. So I'll be buying like 60 pistol Rivens and seeing what can I get. And since Piranha Rivens are very high now, I'm probably gonna get probably I'm gonna get more profit from pistols than from rifles, but I don't know yet. So see you then.